Because, by the way, I'm Dr. Jared Hill, and founder of Hill Family Chiropractic. Been here for over 20 years here in Branson with my wife. We opened up the practice and really wanting to serve the community and help people improve their overall health, quality of life. And one thing about this workshop, why this is my favorite workshop, because we get to see life changes, and we're all about seeing lasting results, really getting to the underlying cause, and not wanting to see just a temporary relief or a temporary benefit, but really see a shift in the trajectory of our patients' lives. And so if that's what you want, then you're in the right place, because we don't want to do that. We have to really get to the underlying issue. So a couple things we want to make sure to cover tonight is how to get the best results possible, and that's learning. What we're going to be covering is what you want to make sure to be doing, and then also what you want to make sure not to be doing that could be interfering with your care. So that way you can get the better results faster. And really, that's our acronym is BRF, Better Results Faster Workshop, because we literally see that with our patients. The patients that don't make it, like we've got a couple empty seats here tonight, hopefully they were going to make it to another one, because it's a significant difference of people making the most out of their investment in their care here and helping to shift the direction and the health of their life. So I congratulate you for being here and making it happen. Even if somebody's had to twist your arm to make it happen, right? I do like to ask questions, and the more feedback, the more fun it is. And then please don't leave me hanging up here with the pin drop, that silence in there. But it's much more enjoyable that way. Just a quick story about myself. Well, actually, before I get into that, there is one more key bonus as well that we're going to be covering today, and that is really how we're making generational changes to the next generations coming. And you'll have an opportunity, if you haven't had your whole family checked, you'll have that opportunity to do that, get them scheduled tonight. But you're going to understand why we see so many babies and kids in the whole family as well. So that kind of leads me into my story, where my dad was a chiropractor. And my brother's currently a chiropractor in Texas. My uncle was a chiropractor. We grew up in chiropractic home. My dad had a table at the house, and had 3 other siblings. We'd line up at the table and take turns getting adjusted. And I thought everybody's dad had the same table, doing things the same way. And but in the community, we lived in Wyoming in some different small towns. And really, what made it a key difference in my life is I'd be hanging out with my friends, just at a ball game or just doing some activities, and then strangers would come up to me and go, "Oh, you're Dr. Hill's son," and I kind of go, "Oh, did I do something wrong?" But really, they would start sharing with me and telling my dad's this amazing miracle worker and all these things that he's done to help him out. And at first it was really strange, but then I got used to it, because it happened all the time. Smaller towns, people, they know who I am. I don't maybe know who they are. But it really made an impact on me, seeing how genuine they were and the life change, and how appreciative they were of just the impact my dad had on their life. And I knew at those moments that really started to make an impact where I wanted to help people. I knew that whatever I do in my life, I want to see people's faces like that. I want to have an impact in the community. But I didn't know for sure if chiropractic was my avenue yet, right? So, and that's where when I got to high school, I had to start making some of those decisions. And I hung around in my dad's office a little bit more, and that's really where it started to shift for chiropractic, because I got to see for myself patients coming in and seeing that hopeless, right? Some of them on a dozen different medications, saying that the doctor said they're going to have to be on those for the rest of their life, and people have tried surgeries, multiple medications, all kinds of problems, and being able to see naturally, without putting any more drugs or adding any more surgery, seeing their life shift and change for a whole nother direction was really inspiring to me, because we were around a healthy family. We didn't really get to see that. I didn't get to see that much. And so that is why I wanted to make that decision, chiropractic, and start heading that direction. But the reason why you guys are here is because there's something that I observed in my dad's practice that I didn't like. And these patients that were coming in, families shifting the direction of their health or life, getting healthier and healthier, off medications, fantastic. But there's another group of people that would come in and they'd get adjusted. And they're like, "Oh man, my neck feels better, my back feels better." But their health and their life was continually going downhill. And for me, it looked, from an observational standpoint, it looked like they were getting the same kind of care. And well, why aren't these guys getting the same results as everybody else, right? Why are these people that are getting that temporary relief, it seems like they're getting a benefit, but something's wrong because their health is continually going downhill. And that's why you guys are here. If that's the case where you don't want to be in that group and you want to be in the group that has a life transformation, we know that you don't need more information, we need transformation. We need to shift the direction of your health and your life. And there's some key foundational principles we need to understand to make sure we're on the same page with that. And that's why we're passionate about this particular workshop. We've been studying from that point on in undergrad and graduate school, chiropractic, and then now over 20 years in practice. We've had a lot of practice, right? Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of families and patients seeing what results them getting what do we do to make sure they get the best results and the most sustainable results. And that's what I want to make sure you get tonight. Does that sound good? Cool. So the first question I have for you is, are Americans healthy? There's always some chuckles and stuff. It's pretty obvious. You don't even have to answer it. I know that we're a mess, right? And unfortunately, it's instead of crying, we're laughing, right? Because we are such a mess. We look at the cancer, disease, all these things that are just continually getting worse and younger because we're looking in all the wrong places, right? So we're not going to cover all that stuff tonight, but there's a couple key things to make sure to understand. Is one of them is, if your life and your lifestyle doesn't look completely different than most of the people around you, then statistically you're not headed in a real good direction with your overall health. And we're going to talk about why some of that is. And number one, I have a question, is most people base their health on how they what? How they feel, exactly. How they feel. So let me ask you, what does cancer feel like on the early stages? Right? What does diabetes feel like on those early stages? You know, you'll notice that there's a lot of things of disease and cancer and things that can build up in our body and people not even know it, not even feel it. We probably all know of someone that seem to be healthy, they're active, they may even be exercising, eating good, and all of a sudden they have been diagnosed with cancer with a few months to live. So we need to really understand the difference. And the number one thing is, would you guys think it's a wise decision to base your health on how your body is feeling? I wouldn't either. That's not a good decision. We're going to talk more extensively of that, but if you look at our society, that's where most people's mental aspect and their focus is. Hey, as long as I look good, I feel good, I can do the things I want to do, their life and their lifestyle just keeps going in a certain direction until all of a sudden they get that diagnosis, right? All of a sudden something keeps them from going on, like they all of a sudden feel the pain. So by the time someone finds out they've got diabetes, unfortunately, sometimes they're already going blind, they're having neuropathy and or other issues, sometimes life and death with their blood sugar. Same thing with cancer or multiple diseases. So the point is, we need to not be looking at how our body is feeling to measure our overall health. We need to really look at how our bodies function, right? And so if we take a look, you've all been given these little cards, and there's 10 key questions we're going to cover this evening to make sure we're all on the same path. And I'm hoping that the majority of these questions you already know the answers to, but all it takes is one question that you were a little confused about or didn't know that can completely shift the direction of your life and your health. So we need to make sure we're covering each one of these and make sure you have an understanding of what that looks like. Well, I found that your quality of life can be based on the quality of questions that we ask. And so we're going to be walking through these together, and also know that by the time we get to number 10, we're going to be wrapping everything up and be done. So you'll have an idea of kind of like where we're at in this process too. And so number one is your body designed to heal itself? What do you guys think? Yeah, you bet. Yeah, it's a known fact that the human body is self-healing and self-regulating, right? It's so awesome how God designed our body to be fearfully, wonderfully made for a purpose, and the intelligence of our body and designed to do that. We know it's a fact, we believe that, but the question is, then why is the hospital across the street full of sick people not healing and repairing? So if we look at this scenario, we know the body is designed to do this, and it's super healthy, it's super intelligent, we got to answer that question. So if I get a cut on my arm, and that cut, if it's left there, it could. What does it naturally want to do after that cut happens? What does the body want to do? Clot it up because it wants to heal it, right? Because we're born with an innate intelligence, that wants to heal and repair, that does the best things for us. So we know we're born that way. We get a cut, it naturally wants to do it. We break a bone, it wants to heal up that. But what if there's something lodged inside that cut, and like a big deep splinter? What could happen to that cut? Get infected, right? So that infection, or that if that doesn't get resolved or taken care of, unfortunately, that can get into my bloodstream, get septic, and actually kill me. Right? So wait, did my body lose the ability to heal and repair? Or was it just being interfered with? Right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, our body never ever loses the ability to heal and repair. But unfortunately, there's several things in our life that can beat us up and start causing kind of like splinters to interfere with our natural ability to do its job. So one thing in our practice, what we're passionate about doing to get to the root cause, we have to identify what are the splinters. Because we're not going to be able to put any more healing in your body. You're born with the maximum amount of the healing potential you have. But there's things that beat you up and interfere. So if we can identify the splinters and remove those, all of a sudden your body can heal and repair and shift the direction and course of your life and your health. So today we're going to be talking about not only what we do to help remove some of those splinters in a sense, but also what you may be doing that keeps causing splinters in there yourselves. And you may not even be aware of it, right? Because if we're going to keep moving forward with your overall health, we have to identify those. We want to make sure to cover those. So the question number 2 is, how do you know if you're healthy? Right? We know we can't base it on how we feel and how we look, so that's where we have to look at how the body is actually functioning. Okay? So we're going to talk more extensively here in a few minutes, but if you take a look at the World Health Organization, it talks about how its definition of health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So, a couple things I'd like to point out. Number 1, a complete physical, mental, and social well-being. Complete, I think of complete as 100%. Another thing is it's not just talking about physical health. We're talking about mental, social health. I would put in there spiritual health, right? But we know that each part of the body interferes with one another, right? Mind, body, spirit. And if there's something going on, have you ever felt, if there's a lot of emotional stuff going on, how that can affect you physically, right? Tension and stress building up in your body. If something spiritually is going on, emotionally, socially, physically, all of them interconnect and interfere with one another. So a lot of people, they'll come in hoping that we're going to solve all their problems to move forward by just addressing some physical components. But I'm here to tell you, we need to make sure we're addressing our mindset, our spiritual health, our mental, our emotional, social, all those areas impact how well of results you're going to get in our office. So we're going to talk about some specifics with that and to make sure we get you guided in the right direction. But just know that it's like a spokes on a wheel, and each compartment impacts one another. The other thing is it's not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. That means that just because someone hasn't been diagnosed with disease or doesn't have any pain doesn't mean that they're actually healthy, right? We talked about that earlier, that some people can have diabetes or different diseases or cancer in their body and not even know or feel that it's going on, right? So if we take a look at this illness-wellness continuum, it's a good example of that. Let's pretend that we're all born over here in optimal health, but then life can start beating us up, right? Like car accidents or bike wrecks or different postures and positions and work and so forth. Different stresses in our life. We'll cover those more in detail, but the point is, some people move down this path towards disease and dying much faster than others. Would you agree? Right? So, of course, we all want to be more on this side, functioning better, feeling better, having a better quality of life. But unfortunately, a lot of us are moving down this path and not even aware that it's happening because we're basing our health on how we what? How we feel. And so that's where we call this zone, comfort zone, the false wellness. A lot of people are in this zone where their body's starting to break down inside and they don't even feel that it's happening and going on. So we have to have tools and ways to assess what's the trajectory, where are you going with your health, so that way we can make sure that we're shifting that direction and you're building a stronger foundation on the inside, not just how you feel. And it all goes back to function, how your body's actually functioning, okay? So number 3, what system in your body keeps you healthy, which is we're talking about the function of the body. There's a system that controls all other systems in the body. Do you guys know what it is? Nervous system, gold star, good job. The central nervous system is the master controller system of the body. Why do they call it the master system? Because it controls 100% of every organ, every gland, every tissue cell in the body. Not 99%, but 100%. So your brain, the spinal cord running right down through the middle of that spine. And so if we take a look at that, we want to make sure that has full communication, right? And so if we take a look at this Journal of Neurological Science, talks about, for you guys that like research, the quality of your healing is directly proportional to the functional capability of your what? The nervous system to send and receive messages. Well, what does that mean, sending and receiving messages? We talked about your central nervous system is your brain and the spinal cord running right down central because it's down through the spinal cord, through the spine. And then those nerves branch out and control everything like an irrigation system to all your arms, legs, every cell. But it's got to be able to communicate back and forth. So for example, in here right now, subconsciously, there's things going on constantly to regulate how your body is working, right? Your blood pressure, your heart rate, your temperature, your digestive system, your immune system, fighting off kind of impurities and things that were around all the time. So let's say if you started getting cold in here in this room, let us know. We'll turn the heat down, or turn the heat up. But if you started getting cold, automatically, what does your body start to do? Starts to shiver, right? So automatically it's going to start generating heat. Subconsciously, I'm not going to tell my body, hey, start shivering so I can generate my heat. My body knows what my temperature needs to be, and it'll start to shiver. Same thing if it gets too hot, then all of a sudden the body will open up those pores and some sweat will start pouring out, which will help release some of the heat because it's wanting to regulate our body. So our body is adapting to the environment. So through our senses, all of our senses is how our body then takes our nervous system, takes that information, communicates it to the brain, and then sends it back from the brain to tell the body what to do. I need to increase my blood pressure. I need to increase my heart rate. I need to start to sweat. I need to start to digest some food, right? Does that make sense? So you live your life through your nervous system. Your nervous system is the gateway to help understand the environment and what we're going through on a daily basis to then be able to have your body adapt appropriately and be resilient to fulfill the job and purpose that it has, right? So we want to make sure it's sending and receiving those messages. That feedback loop system has nothing interfering with it. I don't know about you, but I've tried to watch a video on my cell phone with 1 or 2 bars of signal strength, and it can be pretty frustrating. You're like, it's spinning and spinning, and maybe it starts back up, and then it stops, and it's spinning again. Have you ever felt like your health or your body's that way sometimes? You know, what signal strength are you functioning on? Right? How well is your body sending and receiving those messages throughout every part of your body? Right? And then unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff on the inside that we don't even know how it's doing unless we have something to measure it. So we'll talk about how we measure those things. But first, what protects this vital system? What protects the nervous system? What do you think it is? The spine. Yep, the spine. Now the muscles really help a lot with the protect and stabilize the spine, right? But the spine is like armor protecting. So on your little sheet, if you guys like to follow along, it's your spine and your skull is like the armor that actually protects the central nervous system. And you can see that right through here. You'll notice this little chart. Your spine, those nerves, you can see those little delicate nerves, how they just start branching out of the spine. Do you know any other system, organ system in the body that has bone completely encapsulating it? We have our brain and our spinal cord, which is a central nervous system, that is completely covered with bone structure. It's almost like God knew what He's doing that need to be protected, right? But then you think about the rib cage. Well, the rib cage, that does pretty good. It's partially those are vital organs, our heart and our lungs and our kidney, but people can get transplants and they can live without that in a lot of those. They can take a kidney out. Those are vital. But what controls those? Have you ever seen anybody without a brain or a spinal cord? And what controls those vital organs? So one of the questions, 2 questions before that, it talked about when we asked the question, what's the system that controls how healthy you are? What do you think the number 2 answer for that question is? Or a common mistake? On your little sheet there, it has the immune system. That's really common for people to say that, because isn't our immune system important for our health? It's critical. But what controls our immune system? It's the central nervous system. So we're talking about prioritization, right? Have you ever heard of somebody that has a lowered immune system or an overactive immune system, like it's too high or too low? A blood pressure that's either too high blood pressure, too low blood pressure, blood sugar, too high, too low. What's regulating all that? Well, it's your central nervous system is communicating how to adapt through all that. So we have to go to, what we're talking about is from the very core, how our body works and functions, and then work our way out. We have to have the specific parts and how they're working, the power to that, and the intelligence through that. And one thing about, we have a lot of doctors in fields that are very specialists, like a heart doctor, digestive doctor, immune system, and they're working these different systems, but we need to make sure that we have to make sure the system that controls those are working properly, right? So let me give you an example. Let's say let's say it was completely dark right now. We jumped in a little van or bus, whatever, and we drove over to my house, and we pull up, the lights were completely off. So I go in there, start flipping some switches, and nothing's turning on. So what's the next step? Do I fumble my way out to the garage, get my ladder, and we get some new light bulbs, and we start replacing all the light bulbs? No, that seems ridiculous, right? But instead, what are we going to do? We're going to go in, and I'm going to fumble my way up to the fuse box and feel my way through and see which one's out of alignment. I'm going to make an adjustment to that fuse so the power's back on, right? Get everything in alignment so then the circuits can work right, the power source to those light bulbs. Then, once I get the power on, then I can identify, oh, we do have a bad light bulb. We do need to replace that one light bulb. And what we're doing as a society, unfortunately, when we start breaking down, our body breaks down, we go from the outside in rather than the inside out. We need to make sure the system that controls everything is working efficiently first, so the body can heal and repair itself naturally before we start working too much on all the other stuff, right? And so that's where the spine comes into play when we're talking about overall health, whether it's cardiovascular or digestive, blood sugar. We've had a patient just this last week talk about how she's off her insulin, her blood pressure or blood sugar medications because her nervous system's functioning better. She's changing the way she's eating, and these lifestyle elements. And we see this constantly: blood pressure, cholesterol, anxiety meds, and on and on. But we need to make sure that the structure of the spine is in alignment, or else sometimes it starts to interfere with the power source of those nerves not being able to send and receive those messages, and then the Wi-Fi or the signal strength in our body has different parts that are not functioning at 100%, and then eventually over time it can start breaking down and affecting our overall health, our quality of life, our kids' lives, right? Our families' lives. So number 5, we need to understand that stress causes a condition which interferes with the nervous systems, interferes with those messages that we're talking about. And that condition, kind of like the splinter that we're talking about, it's a condition that we call, do you guys know what that is? It starts with an S. Any guesses? Subluxation. Very good. 2 gold stars. That's a good job. Subluxation is where there is an interference, right? There's a blockage within the spine's not working right, so it's interfering with the nerve communication and disturbing those sending and receiving of the messages in the body. Just like the splinter, So everything that we do in our office is all about trying to locate and correct the subluxations, restoring the proper alignment so the nerves can start healing and repairing. But then we take it a step further in our office, which makes it fairly unique compared to many, is then we also want to coach you on how to keep it that way, stabilize it, and learn how to not be putting more subluxations in your body, right? And that's why you guys are here today, because what happens is these subluxations, when they are affecting the body, unfortunately, a lot of times people have no pain at all. They have no pain whatsoever, and they can be going on in the body and causing arthritis and degeneration where the spine breaks down. So if you think about it, if this is out of alignment and I'm living life, sitting, bending, doing sports or activities in the yard or whatever it might be, or a desk job, and there's a subluxation there, out of alignment, it starts to cause wear and tear structurally to that spine, starting to interfere with those nerves. And many people have that going on and cutting off that signal strength, the sending and receiving, and not even know it until all of a sudden they bend over to pick up the pencil or tie their shoe, and all of a sudden they can't walk. And they're like, they do it every day, but for some reason that one day, right? And they think, they maybe think, oh man, that happened to me last week, so it should be a quick fix. We take an x-ray and we look, phase 3 degeneration, getting bone on bone, the discs are getting worn out, something that's been there for 30 plus years, that's a problem, right? And so it's like the last straw that broke the camel's back. The good news is we can, once we identify the problem, we can start to restore better function and start putting a stop to that degeneration. Now, there's different phases of that degeneration, but just know that, unfortunately, subluxations, many of them are pain-free, that they don't cause any kind of pain and symptoms. And the reason why is because the sensory nerves are what tells you how you feel. So if I put my hand on a hot stove over here, I'm glad that sensory system tells me, ouch, so I can pull my hand off and my skin doesn't start melting, right? So when you have these aches and pains, it's your body, this sensory portion of the nervous system being activated, like, oh, I've got neck pain, a headache, I've got sciatic nerve pain, or whatever's going on. And those are like your vehicle dashboard warning lights going, hey, something's not right. We need your help. Something needs to stop doing something, or something needs to change because there's some stuff going on. And what are we doing as a society? Right? We're just maybe throwing a medication at that. Right? And so, for example, on the vehicle side of things, if my alignment, if I hit a curb with my truck and my alignment is off, what happens to my tires over time? They wear out, right? Just like the subluxation we're talking about. What happens when I start getting these warning lights on my dashboard and I get a check engine light and it's like, man, that's strange, I better go get that checked out. I take it to my mechanic and I pull it in and he goes, oh, no problem, I can fix that for you. And he puts a piece of tape over top of that light. All right, thank you, I don't see that light anymore. What are we doing when we have a headache and we take an ibuprofen? Great, I don't have that headache anymore. When we have high blood pressure, let's say if somebody has a high blood pressure and they go to the doctor and the doctor says, okay, this is not good, this is a concern for the heart, we're going to go ahead and give you some medication. Let's say the medication does exactly what it's designed to do, and it lowers the the blood pressure to its perfect range. Okay? Did that medication solve the reason why the person had high blood pressure in the first place? No, right? So, unfortunately, so it's kind of like if I put that piece of tape on there and then I keep on driving, and if there's something going on wrong with my engine, it might last months. But eventually, more than likely, I might be off the side of the road with my engine seized up or smoking or whatever, and that's what happens to our health a lot of times because we're basing our health on how we feel or addressing these little compartments or these parts rather than going to the source to figure out the root cause of why is the high blood pressure there in the first place. Because if we don't address that, do you think there's a consequence for that person's overall health? Even if they make that blood pressure perfect range? So the thing is it's important to understand that medications can save people's lives, there's no doubt. But why and how are we using those? In our society right now, unfortunately, we're talking about are Americans healthy? I don't know if you're aware, but we're ranked like 48th to 50th on the scale of healthiest countries. And I mean, we spend more than any other country in the world, more than double on our healthcare system, but yet we're ranked so low. There's a lot of things to get into, but the main thing from that is, one element is we take more medication than any other country in the world. So for example, if you look at the total world population, it makes up about, the United States makes up roughly around 5%. We are taking roughly around 70 to 75% of all medication developed in the world. So that 5% of the world is taking 70% of medication. There's a problem with that. Because we're not addressing two things. Number one, every medication has a side effect, right? But number two, we're not addressing the underlying cause. And so unfortunately, we're deceived to thinking, hey, we can just keep on going like as normal. Right? So my point of that is, this is not against the medical field, because we are continually getting more and more referrals. We want to work with the medical field and physical therapists and nurse practitioners. We're building relationships to work together. We're not diagnosing and treating all these conditions. We're just wanting to help people get to the root cause of why those are happening in the first place, to understand that we're spine and nervous system experts to make sure those are functioning optimally. And when they have other concerns and other things, great, go and take care of those stuff. But there's a reason why patients are getting off all of these medications, is not because we're taking them off. We'll never advise a person to get on or off any medication. It's illegal for a chiropractor to do that, right? But what's awesome is when the body is functioning the way it's supposed to, when the blood pressure normalizes it by itself, do they need a medication for that? Right? So there's more beyond the spine and the nervous system too. We're going to talk about that it's necessary with our life and our lifestyle that goes and works alongside with that. But what we're talking about here today is not just about a headache or neck pain or sciatic nerve pain. We're talking about the course of your life and your health, and which direction are you going? What do you want with it? The reason why our team works so hard at the very beginning to understand what are your goals, not just your immediate and short term, but your long-term goals, because we want to see you get well and achieve those goals. So number 6, what kind of stress? We need to understand what are the stressors that cause these subluxations. Because these subluxations start to interfere and mess with our health and our life and our quality of life. We need to understand these stressors, and there's 3 key stressors. We call them the 3 T's, thoughts, toxins, and traumas. Okay? And these are the mental stresses, chemical stresses, and physical stresses. So let's talk about this for a second. Mental stresses, I kind of referred to that earlier where, hey, have you ever felt tension in your body, right? Like you be in an argument or there's just stress going on with whether it's politics or finances or family or whatever is happening. I'm sure we've all experienced that, right? Have you guys experienced that a little bit? Maybe some tension. People hold it differently. Some people, they feel it in their lower back. Some people between their shoulder blades. Some people in their neck and their head, and it causes headaches. But the point is that, like we were saying earlier, your nervous system is filtering out that stress, and your body physically is trying to prepare it for whatever it needs to. So that if it's under stress, it's ready for fight or flight, for a battle. And so one of the things that happens is, let's say if there's a tiger that runs through that door and starts to chase after us, our fight or flight, those stress hormones are going to be kicked to the highest level so we can try to survive. Well, that's a good thing. But what happens is, for us to survive that fight or flight, it's going to kick on, like increase our blood pressure, increase our heart rate to drive oxygen and blood through our muscles so we can run as fast as we possibly can, right? It's going to increase things like that, but it's going to decrease like serotonin. You know, when your stress levels are increased, you're running from a tiger, you don't need to be sleeping right now. So it's going to be decreasing the serotonin, right? You don't need to be digesting food, so your digestive enzymes and all that starts to decrease. You don't need to be reproducing. Your reproductive organs start to decrease in its function, right? So it's all about prioritizing. So when you're in fight or flight, you're not in repairing, healing, digesting, resting mode. You're in battle mode and get out of there and deal with the stress, right? Does it feel like I'm maybe explaining your normal week or your day, right? Sometimes, right? In society.
Can it be just for a certain amount of time? Because as a teacher through the years, there was a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm.
And
You bet. Yeah, I mean, the goal is for it to be a short amount of time, because the longer we're built and we're designed to be able to adapt and have that kicked in through moments and times. But the problem is, because of the world, the way it's set up now, we're not only at work dealing with the kids or this or that, we're responsibilities there, then we're watching the news, and then we have tornadoes and earthquakes, and we have politics and there's riots, all constantly stuff around the world bombarding us on top of everything else, because at every moment, at every time, we can just look around the world and see the chaotic world that we live in. So everybody's sympathetic system, meaning like their fight or flight systems are kicked into high gear. So you'll notice that a lot of people are having a hard time having kids, right? There are a lot of people who are having a hard time sleeping at night. There's a lot of people that are having a hard time digesting any foods properly. They're having a lot of digestive disorders. And then you add all that. Well, if you're not digesting well, you're not sleeping well, you're not recovering well, you have all this stress, your pedal's on high gear, you're running your tank low, and then it's your other systems, your organs, your energy's low. So what do we do? Well, man, I got to get through the day. I have work responsibilities. I've got kids. I've got all this stuff. I got to jack that up with caffeine or sugar or whatever, and then I'm keyed up. My mind won't shut down, so I got to take something to try to shut my mind down. And then it's a cycle, and it's just this path, this downward cycle that many people's health is going down. So the number one thing is we got to understand the pattern and the cycle. And then what do we do with this? Well, number one is we need to make sure that are we having a subluxation that's interfering? Because what's so awesome, and one of the tests we do is the heart rate variability. You stick your hand in that little machine. It actually measures how your body's processing and dealing with stress. Is it more parasympathetic dominant, sympathetic dominant? Is your body battery draining and getting susceptible? Your immune system, cardiovascular system, your cardiovascular system, is it getting more susceptible to consequences and risks? What's the direction you're heading with your life busyness? There's a reason why we have patients that have been coming in for 20 plus years, is to monitor, to help them get through their ups and downs of their daily life stressors. But that's a great tool, and it's now becoming on beds and watches and all kinds of stuff. And we've been calculating it for over 20 years to evaluate patients' health and the direction. And so we need to make sure the nervous system is balanced so it can shut down when it can shut down. Because otherwise that gas pedal a lot of times gets stuck. Some high stressors get in there, and then they can't shut it down, and they can't rest and sleep when they're supposed to. And when you get an adjustment, it unlocks that. What's so cool, have you ever had a computer? I do this, unfortunately, all the time still, is I'll be looking at this project or that project. Before long, my computer's starting to freeze up. It's slow and it's freezing up. And I look, and I've got like 20 tabs pulled up, and like I can't even read all the tabs because I got so many tabs pulled up. And I can't even exit out of them. It's just not working right. So office manager Michael, he's our Cisco. He does a computer adjustment, which basically a power cycle. We unplug it, plug it back in. It can reboot and start to reorganize. And I still got all those programs, but now I can start shutting them down so it can run more efficiently. And life can get that way where it gets so stacked up, we start to interfere with those signals. And that's really what a subluxation, when our life overloads us from the mental standpoint. But what's cool is when you get an adjustment, it helps to reboot neurologically. That's why we can measure that. It's been measured, proven the impacts of how it helps to balance your sympathetic, parasympathetic. That's why people go into, now I can start to heal, repair, I can focus, I can digest, I can start to sleep better, my energy starts to increase. All these things that start to happen literally just from an adjustment, right? Because it's actually realigning the spine, rebooting the nervous system so it can reorganize whether it's a chronic long-term stress or a high major trauma that someone's been through. But mental stress in your thoughts is a major cause of subluxation. And we're not going to be able to, we're not super good on like counseling and coaching and all that stuff, but the main thing is, I would have to say from a personal standpoint, what are you doing to keep your thoughts and your mind on track? Are you capturing your thoughts and aligning it with God's Word? And yoking up with Jesus, handing it over to Him, because we're trying to deal with all these different stressors and dealing and trying to control things we're not supposed to. and it's crushing us. So the faster we can realize that, recognize it, hand it over, yoke up with Him, and have trust and faith in that. Because you literally, from our brain standpoint, we can't be having fear, anxiety. We have bitterness, angerness, frustrations, anxiety, fear, all that stuff, which the Bible says do not have, because it's not good for us. And when we're bitter towards someone, it's like us drinking poison, hoping the other person's going to get sick, right? Well, all that stuff only hurts our own physical body. We got to hand that stuff over. But when we can turn and trust the Lord into faith into His plans that He's going to get us through, and we may not understand it, but when we shift our mind and make a choice for gratitude and gratefulness and thankfulness, then it shifts the brain. It's been proven that the same part of the brain, when we have fear, worry, anxiety, all that, is the same part that also for gratitude. And you have to make a choice. Which one are you going to be? You can't have them both. So when we shift our mind towards gratitude, all of a sudden you can't have worry and anxiety and all the other stuff. So your focus, capturing those thoughts, aligning with God's Word, and moving forward. Mental and emotional stress is a critical factor that we see patients really slow down their progress. Okay? 2 more key things, chemical and physical. Chemical stresses, we got to feed the fuel, the body what it needs. We can't expect to have the energy of a race car and be feeding it all this crud fuel, right? And Amanda, right here with our nutrition coach, if you haven't already had your consultation, you'll be able to have that to help look and walk through. Is there any areas we need to start fine-tuning? Going over the anti-inflammatory diet, the packet to start working on some foundational pieces to help your body to heal and repair. Because we got to have the building blocks. If I'm going to build a house of health, strong house of health, stable, and to be able to heal and repair, we need the fuel and the proteins and the vitamins, the minerals, the antioxidants, all the nutrients, the building blocks to be able to heal and repair. It's like me wanting to build a house, and we have all the workers there, we have the blueprints, but we don't have any lumber. We're not going to get very far. You got to have the lumber. So as we're waking up the nervous system, getting those messages going, then we need to have the fuel so we can take that and then heal and repair. Our bodies is a new body every 7 years, right? All the old cells are dying off and the new cells are coming to life, reproducing itself. We need the fuel to do that. So if you need help with the detoxing or increasing nutrition, whatever, you'll be able to have a chance to do that. Physical stress, trauma, macro and micro traumas. Break that down into two categories. Macro, it makes sense. Your car accidents, slips, falls, the birthing process, those major impacts to the body, right? Sports injuries. That makes sense that's going to cause a subluxation, trauma to the spine. But what about your micro physical traumas? The day in and day out posture, like how you sleep every night. Any stomach sleepers? We got one honest person over here? No, just kidding. But if you think about, let's say we're going to sleep on our stomach and you turn your head, and if everybody turns their head to the right for a second and then keep it there for about 6-8 hours, do you think that might cause a problem? Meaning that, I don't know, do you have one of those beds that has the hole for your face? No? Okay. So it means typically to breathe, you usually have to rotate your head, and a lot of times the hips and things start to go with that, and it starts to cause a twisting motion in the spine, and then unfortunately it's there for hours and upon hours. It's not conducive for the spine, and it really interferes with how far someone will progress. So the best way is on your back with a good pillow that supports the curve, not 20 pillows that jacks the head up this direction, right? Or on your side, and with your side you have you want to have your pillow to where it's matching your shoulder, and you're depending on how much you sink in your bed. So you're just thinking about, if you have too small of a pillow, then your head's going to drop down. Too big of a pillow, it's going to go this direction. You want to keep it level. So some basic things, and if your bed itself, if you get in your bed and you kind of roll into the hole where you normally sleep, it may be time to either flip your mattress or get a new one. If you're getting a new one, it's your lucky day. We got a special today. No, just kidding. No, but the main thing with a bed, you just want to make sure that it's supporting your spine, right? Some common sense things, because you're spending a lot of time, hours upon hours on your spine. It can start to interfere with that. Same thing with how we sit at our job. When we're sitting at our job, is your computer in front of you and your head down? Is the monitor up more eye level? Is it over here and your keyboard's over here? Are you talking on the phone like this all the time? what do you do on a daily basis? You know, do you a construction where you're hammering things one side, or a server that's always carrying trays on one side? Usually we have daily routines. Even us, as we're adjusting you, we're adjusting more on one side of the table than the other side. So we do a lot of kind of like one-legged squats when we do the hug adjustment. And if we're not working out and exercising, then there's imbalances that start to happen with our pelvis and our hips and our back. And then we're bending over a lot. So it puts a lot of stress on our shoulders and our neck and everything else. So we have to be exercising to help strengthen the weak spots that are not getting worked, and then to help stretch out and loosen up the areas that are getting overworked, right? Exercise is critical. Our bodies are meant to move, and if we're not getting a good, healthy amount of full body exercise, then it's going to be, you're going to start to plateau on how much you function. Because when we're adjusting you to get better function, guess what it wants to do? It wants to go back to that old pattern that it's been in, right? So we have to change that nerve and muscle memory pattern with not only the adjustment stimulation, but also with the exercise. And that's a critical component for you to keep progressing. So in summary, the 3 T's, thoughts, toxins, traumas, those are the causes of the subluxations. That's your lifestyle. Aligning your lifestyle the way God designed and intended for it to be, right? For you to have maximum health and function. So if we take a look, this is Medical Journal of Spine, 2005. They took 752 subjects and they're measuring posture. Why are we looking at posture and looking at those elements? Because if you take a look at all measures of health status showed significant poor scores as posture deviations increased. Even minor forehead posture was shown to be detrimental from breathing, heart rate, pain, and disability. Well, a lot of patients are like, what? How do you have so many problems with just a bad posture? And we're talking about even minor forehead posture. Remember, what's the system that controls everything in the body? Nervous system. What's protecting that? Your spine. So if your posture, your spine is shifted or bent or twisted, do you think that could potentially affect those delicate nerves that are coming out of the spine? It only takes the weight of a dime, 10 millimeters mercury of pressure, if you had that in your hand, to cut off up to 60% of the function of that nerve. So it doesn't take very much pressure to really interfere or impact with the nervous system. And here's the thing, is a lot of people go, oh man, that's good to know. I'll have to pay attention to see if I feel it to know if I need to go in and do something, right? Because most people base their health on how they what? How they feel, rather than measuring how is the body actually functioning. So here's an example of what we want to see. This is Peter. And when he first came in, as you can see, he was talking about all kinds of stuff with his shoulder pain and ulcers and digestive issues, depression, neck discomfort, headaches, and all on and on. If you take this is looking at his back. Here's his right shoulder, his left shoulder. He has had a high left shoulder, and his head was shifting to the right. Here's a side view of his neck, and you can see that his head was falling forward and his neck was straightening out. Green is the curve that we want to see, the arc of life, where the brain, like a waterfall of that nerve strength and energy, is running down through the rest of your body. The thing about Peter is he was already a patient about 3 years previous to this. And at that time he came in, he had never been to a chiropractor before. He was referred in, and he heard that chiropractic could potentially help him. He had some neck discomfort, some headaches occasionally. We checked him out, and we were able to help him. He got an adjustment. He was already feeling better. He found a chiropractic practice that took his insurance, so he went on to that practice. We're like, hey, no problem, totally understand. Go where your insurance is going to pay for that. That's no issue. But here he is back 3 years later, and he's talking about all this stuff. I'm like, Peter, now aren't you going to the chiropractor? And he says, yes, I go about once a month. The insurance covers about 12 visits a year. It's perfect. Once a month is about what it needs to help keep that neck headache tension that I was having, to keep that at bay, right? So he was managing the neck tension and the headaches as long as he went about his once a month visit, and the insurance would cover it, so he was good to go. But eventually he started having this pain radiating down his arm, this toothache, of like when he tried to sleep at night. He'd be tossing and turning in the middle of the night, get up, move around, ice, heat, stretch, trying to deal with it. It was affecting sleep, affecting work, affecting taking care of the kids. Eventually he goes to the doctor, and then guess what? Got some muscle relaxers, some pain relievers. As long as he's taking that, he can go ahead and sleep most nights through the night. That's not an issue anymore. And then over time, he starts getting indigestion and heartburn and reflux. And he's like eating different foods, trying to change things up, still having it. So he goes to the doctor. As long as he takes a couple different medications, he can eat pretty much whatever he wants, right? And then eventually he has ulcers, takes some medication for that, depression, takes some medication for that. You can see the trend of where his health is heading because he's not addressing the underlying issues of his overall health. Would you guys agree? So Peter comes in and he's like, and I'm still trying, because at this point he's still thinking, those are good, that's taken care of, I'm taking that, that's fine. I'm still confused, like, so what are you wanting us to help you with? And he's like, well, the last 2-3 months I've been noticing when I take my shirt off in my bathroom mirror, my shoulders getting higher and higher, and there's just seems like there's something structurally not right. I feel like I better get it checked out. So, and that's where he's at. We got it checked out. He understood more. He wanted to start working on corrective care instead of, he was doing a lot of things, even chiropractic for pain relief care, right? Because his main focus, he was using chiropractic to relieve his symptoms. You have to ask the question, why are you going to the chiropractor? Why do you take supplements? Why do you eat? Why do you exercise? Is it to look better, to feel better, or is it to help your body be more resilient, optimally healthy, and adapt to whatever stress and things you're going through? Because that's going to determine the path and how far you take your health. The choices you're making, whether it's massage, herbs, whatever it is why are you doing it, right? And so if you're wanting optimal health and function and live life to the fullest potential, you want to be focusing on the nervous system and making sure you're doing things to help your body be resilient and healthy and well, and be able to have tools to measure that. So with Peter, we started adjusting him. After 3 months of care, you can see his shoulder was starting to drop down significantly. He had an 87% correction on his head shifting over. You can see that he had a 54% curve correction, curve coming back, his head was coming back. So in 3 months time frame, this is way above average in compared to chiropractic cases, right? Or across the board. But the thing is, what do you think happened to all those medications he was taking? He quit taking them. You know, like we said, that we would not be advising anybody to get on or off any medication, but when our body's working the way it's supposed to, we don't need those medications anymore, right? It's not the more medications you have in that medicine cabinet, the healthier you are, right? It's trying to fulfill a weakness, something going on in the body. We need to figure out what that is. And so he later finds out, over time, he realizes he's actually saving money, spending cash out of our practice rather than insurance, because he's addressing the underlying cause. He's not having to go to the doctor anymore. He's not having to do the co-pays. He's not having his deductible and his premiums go up because he's getting sicker and using it more versus healthier and not using it, right? People we either pay for sickness or we pay for wellness care. And one thing about Peter, what do you think he was doing besides being really good at making his appointments to change that rhythm in his spine and address and correct those subluxations? What else do you think he was doing on his own? Lifestyle changes, right? Exactly. One specific one for him was he was starting to incorporate some specific spinal exercises, which we're going to cover. And at the end of the night tonight, you guys will be given an assignment, some things to start working on individually, right? Because we want to see you get better results faster. We want to see the shift in the trajectory where we don't get as much satisfaction of someone getting that just immediate goal and then stop. We have a lot of patients over the years that have done that. So we've been working on what can we do to help them keep going forward, and that's why you guys are here today. So number 7, how do you know if you have a subluxation? Well, we must be checked by a chiropractor. It's comical but really sad. We've had a patient just not too long ago. They've been having dizziness, equilibrium problems for like 15, 20 years. I can't remember exactly. I mean, suffering with it like crazy. Been to all kinds of specialists, trying all kinds of things. Nothing was working. They referred in here. We got them checked and are like, found the problem. Here you go. This is what we need to do to get you healthy and well. Oh, that makes sense. Let me go talk to my primary. And I'm thinking, okay, that's been working for you in the past, meaning like nothing wrong with the primaries, but is the primary the expert with the spine and the nervous system in detecting and correcting a subluxation? No, I mean, the only profession that can do that is a chiropractor, and one that's trained up to how to do that. So it's a completely different field So I'm not going to be giving someone advice on their cardiovascular, their lungs, and all these other elements when it comes to different conditions and diagnosis and diseases. We're about health and performance and life. But we got to make sure that the spine and the nervous system, that power source is lined up the way it's supposed to. So the main point from that is we need to make sure that we're not skewed a little bit. Sometimes we can kind of be thrown off. We need to make sure we go to someone that actually tests what's happening. And there's different types of chiropractors too. And there's some chiropractors that are focused more on pain relief, right? Like neck pain and back pain. And that's totally fine. If that's your goal, that's just not our focus and our goal for you. Now, if that's what your goal was to come in, then we set a care plan for you. And usually that means someone's paying per visit, because then as soon as they're out of pain, then they can stop coming in. And then they'll just come back in when the pain starts happening again. And then unfortunately, we see that's not our favorite person to take care of, because we see them getting worse and worse, just like my dad's practice. Remember we talked about that percentage of patients that they would get better, but then their health was continually going in a negative direction. Fortunately, there's a lot of patients that understood the other path, the other way. Pain is only 10%. We talked about the sensory nerves are the ones that tell you how you feel. That's only 10% of all the nerves in our body. That's why we do testing to measure the other 90%. Because we don't want to base your health. Your pain is vitally important. We want you to feel the best possible and great quality of life, but we're not basing your health on how you feel. We're going to base it on how that 10% of how you feel, but also the other 90%. The nerves controlling your organs, your glands, the muscles, the HRV, the direction you're going, so we can put together a battle plan, a game plan to move forward. Otherwise, what happens is most people base their health on all these different body signals, like we were talking about, like the signals on the dashboard that start to happen. And what's awesome and fun is we love to see people getting well, because when those warning lights, when the body starts working well, functioning better, all these things start to disappear. We've had every single one of these in here improve and improve and improve in our office over the years, and many more. Headaches, pain syndromes, blood pressure, allergies, asthma, ADD, ADHD, autism, multiple sclerosis, depression, anxiety, arthritis, sleep problems, digestive problems, reproductive issues, and on and on. So if your body's having these, we don't want to just ignore it, right? Like what a lot of society does. We'll just kind of ignore it, put a stop to that. We want to think through why is this happening? Am I addressing the root cause, right? So when should you be checked for a subluxation? Well, should you be checked when you have pain or before you have pain, right? When do you brush your teeth? Every day? Even when they don't hurt? Right? I mean, like, why would we do that? Keep them clean? Because why? Maintenance, right? We want to keep those bones, those healthy and without decay, cavities, degeneration, and other problems that can go with that. We're talking about spinal hygiene just like dental hygiene. They used to pull teeth out. Dentistry was formed. Rotten tooth, pull it out, and then eventually, hey, you know what? We can maintain teeth if we start having dental hygiene. Unfortunately, with the spine, we can't pull the spine segments out. We can get new teeth, and that's a blessing. That's a good thing. We can't. They've tried all kinds of things, surgeries, on and on and on, trying to replace and change and adapt, and it's helped people to some level, but it's very, very low results. So the prevention is key, right? It's something that's controlling and protecting the system that controls all of our other systems. So that's why, in my opinion, it's a system that we want to make sure we're addressing and getting to the underlying cause. And not only, most of the problems we see in adults happen clear back in childhood, and that's why we take a look at kids, right? If you take a look at Dr. Abraham Talbot, medical doctor from Harvard, says that research indicates that the major cause of spinal subluxation in infants is childbirth, stressing the need for correction from birth, that irreversible degeneration does not occur. Nerve system injury through cervical spine trauma at birth causes abnormal function, abnormal behavior, and early death SIDS. So, if you take a look at the forceps and the vacuum, do you think that could potentially cause some trauma, the amount of pounds of pulling and stress in that for that baby? You think that maybe could cause a subluxation in the neck? You bet. Fortunately, this is a small percentage of babies, but unfortunately, a lot of these are not even getting checked by chiropractors. right? Causing lifelong neurological and problems structurally. And what do we have problems with now? What's the growing percent in the United States leading a lot of that? C-sections. Again, the little tiny baby. Think about 6-8 pound little baby cranking and pulling on this neck. Do you think that potentially can cause some damage or cause a little subluxation? Do you know what the number one, the leading cause of a child going to the pediatrician is for? Ear infections, right? Ear infections. Do you know that where the nerves that control the ears and the eustachian tubes and whether they're draining or not, where that comes from? Right up here at the top. The ears control eyes, ears, the top of the neck controls the eyes, ears, nose, throat, sinuses, focus, concentration, memory, ADD, ADHD, right? Breathing, heart rate. The vagus nerve comes from right up here at the top. It affects digestive. If we take a look, this is from Dr. Gutman. He studied 1,000 babies, and 80% of them were subluxated from the time they were born. 80% they were being subluxated, affecting their overall health, nursing, sleeping, colicky, restless sleep, torticollis, conjunctivitis, on and on, of different symptoms and things. So why do we see so many babies and kids from the time they're born? When do you think I adjust my baby boys? They're not babies anymore, but when do you think the first time I adjusted them was? A week old? That's a good guess. The day they were born. I was there. I cut the umbilical cord. They take my son over, weigh him, do a couple checks, wrap him up, hand him over within a few minutes. I just witnessed the birthing process. I want to make sure optimal function for that spine and that nervous system. A few ounces of pressure to realign those little bones. So when a lot of times people are thinking, like we have all these families and bringing in kids and babies. One family, they have 11 of them total right now, but they're like, you bring your baby in to get adjusted? They're just thinking of the traumatic of how we adjust babies differently than we adjust adults, right? A few ounces of pressure, like a ripe tomato, putting pressure without your finger pushing in, can restore those little tiny bones, get them functioning better. We have babies coming in that are within a few weeks old that are already on medications because they can't hold any food down, right? They're trying to gain some weight. They're concerned of failure of thriving, right? Some of them not nursing, mothers are hurting, colicky babies, all these things that are going on with these babies, and all of a sudden a few ounces of pressure. It's one of the most amazing things is a parent, especially a first-time parents, bringing their children in, and for a couple of weeks they've been just nonstop crying, suffering. The baby's hardly eating. They're in pain, arching their back. They're not sleeping. They're exhausted. Bring their baby in, and within minutes, some of those babies, you'll just be putting some pressure in, and all of a sudden the baby stops crying. And I had a patient at church stop me. I didn't even know they brought their child in. It was on a Friday, and I was gone. I wasn't here. And on that Sunday, they came in like they were crying, saying how grateful and thankful they brought their child in to get checked. And within instantly of that adjustment, the baby was gooing and gagging, and like the personality came out, and then all of a sudden sleeping through the night. The difference from a functioning nervous system and an interference. I mean, everything from babies that won't go to the bathroom and on, ear infection stories, kids hearing loss, all these things that go on. You can just read the testimonies, but the point is, don't you think it'd be a good idea for every child, every person to be checked from the time they're born, whether they have symptoms or not? And so number 9, how do you correct or stabilize your spine? So now you understand a little bit more of our passion for families, kids, next generations. If we want to make a change, we got to start earlier. But let's focus back on you, right? Where the rubber meets the road, how do you correct and stabilize your spine, what you're coming in with? We call it the 3-legged stool of results. Adjustments in rhythm, breaking bad habits, and corrective exercises. There's a sweet spot of the best results if you implement those 3 things, okay? And the adjustments in rhythm, why do we need an adjustments in rhythm? What does that mean? Well, we talked about how unfortunately, some of you guys have had subluxations in your spine for so many years that it's actually caused arthritis, degeneration, phases of degeneration. So when we adjust that to get it to function better, guess what it wants to do? It wants to go right back out of place, right? There's a nerve or muscle memory pattern. We have to train that and start improving that. So we're adjusting it more frequently right away to get the spine to become healthier, because we got to keep the nerves, the pressure off the nerves so that it can send and receive, so your body can start healing and repairing, so inflammation can start going down, so you can actually start feeling better, right? Getting back to the things you've been wanting to do. But we also we need to start breaking some of those bad habits, like stop putting the splinters in, like we talked about earlier, the 3 T's. How we think, right? How we move, and what we put in our body. We start just improving those elements, giving our body the best chance to make those adjustments even more powerful, hold even better, to keep you moving down that path for optimal health. And then ultimately adding in those corrective specific exercises to retrain and stabilize those spots that unfortunately some of you guys have had some real significant damage that needs quite a bit of repair and stability in there. And the thing is, a lot of people really think that, well, as soon as the pain is gone, the problem's gone. And that we have to, that's why we have these workshops to help understand, because we have a lot of patients over the years that do that. If you take a look here, when someone first starts care, typically our first recommendation, that initial phase of care, is usually around 3 to 6 months, depending on the individual, the age, and all that stuff. But if you backtrack or expand out, usually it takes about 2 to 3 years for someone to reach their maximum correction. So we're talking about just the initial phase of care. We got to get the spine healthier, get the body feeling better, functioning better, healing and repairing. But unfortunately, that's typically not stable at that point. Some people are completely out of pain by the time we reevaluate, re-x-ray, and some of them discontinue care. So what happens if it's not stable? That subluxation resorts back to those old patterns. They start to interfere with the nervous system. Their health starts to decline, and little by little they drop off. And then a lot of times we'll see them 6 months later, 2 years later. It varies from person to person to get them back on track. Some patients, they're doing great. They've made so much progress. They're feeling so much better. They're getting back to the things that they were wanting to do, and they're wanting to continue care. And we start to, a lot of times we're able to start decreasing frequency because their adjustments are starting to hold better. And we put more on the patient, right? Like, okay, great, you're doing great here. Now this corrective stability phase, incorporate these things to keep that momentum going. But some patients, they don't do any changes to their lifestyle. So they're just coming in and getting adjusted, and they're not really doing anything on their end. And what happens is they start to plateau. So one adjustment forward, one back. Like their life, we're not moving forward very much anymore. So either something needs to change if they want to move forward. Either one, we start increasing the adjusting to combat to the amount of stress that they're under, their body's under, or they start incorporating some of the things for themselves so that way they can keep gaining momentum. And that's really where this category is. Through that corrective phase, to get more stability, strength around the spine, holding the adjustment more and more, needing us less and less, so you have more function, more optimal health. And that's what wellness care is really helping people live life to their fullest potential, being as resilient as you can be to adapt to whatever you want to do, right? And that's the goal for most people, but it's a teamwork effort. If you were expecting to come into HFC and have all your problems solved by just getting an adjustment, I'm here to say, unfortunately, we'll be able to help you improve, but if you're wanting to get here, it's teamwork, right? Because it has everything to do with the choices you're making on a daily basis to determine how much you to help build with the adjustments, keeping that spine, the nervous system healthier and healthier. And that only saves you more time and money in the future, right? So we don't guess, we test. We got to go to the understanding of the scans, the nervous system to measure function through that, right? That's also why we do the in-body, to look at the body composition, the ratios of body fat, muscle mass, the visceral fats, all those things. So with this rhythm of adjustments, removing bad habits, incorporating the exercises really ramps people to get those best results possible. And so that you're not in that category of just getting that temporary benefit. If you need help in any of these areas, nutrition, there she is, Amanda right there. We can always evaluate, look at what do you need, where are you at, where are you missing, are you deficient anywhere? Do you have toxins? Do you have other issues going on that need to be addressed? With some simplified functional medicine, we can do blood work or saliva testing. There's all kinds of things that really depending on what you need and where you're at. We've got classes that we have right here if you ever want a class. We have the personal training, of course, with Blake. She had, I don't know, like 7 or so or more trainings she did today, helping people get stronger. I had a patient today telling me how much stronger this person's getting, and they're starting to hold their adjustments better because they're incorporating some rehabilitation in with their adjustments. But you may be able to do that on your fine, which is totally great. These are only things if you need help with. We want to provide a facility that can address and not have any gaps to keep you moving forward. So number 10, down to the wire. You guys hanging in there? You doing okay? What is your next most important step? We've talked about a lot of stuff, and there's going to be some things you're going to have to kind of chew on, but what I'd really like, I pray that you have 1 or 2 key things that stood out in your mind that the Lord is saying, you know what, He's been telling me I need to either stop doing this or start doing this. What is that next step for you? You don't have to tell me, but hopefully you're thinking of what that next key thing is for you to make sure you're going to that next step, to the next level. And then over time, we'll be able to monitor and measure and to keep you up, because life is up and down. We have patients that, like I said, have been coming in for over 20 years and have excellent care and health, but they can go through deaths in the family, lost jobs, injuries, car accidents, to help them get through those times in their life, to get them back on a healthy track and path. So the number one thing is I recommend you take action. Right? Don't let all this information sit. Whatever that thought was, those things you were talking about, those 2 items, incorporate that. Put it into action. I want to end with this story, and then we're going to give you your exercise recommendations. This particular sweet girl, we didn't have this. She didn't know our family. Her parents didn't know our family. She had some neurological damage going on. It was causing tremendous weakness on the side of her body, coordination issues. But also she had issues with her focus, her concentration, her memory, to the having a difficult time in school, having to be pulled out separate from all the other kids, not being able to participate. What do you think? She couldn't participate with everybody else in most things, with the PE in the gym, to school, to different activities. Where do you think her social and emotional health was at, right? You can imagine what that does to a 9-year-old girl. And her parents were doing everything they could. I mean, they were occupational therapists, physical therapists. They had her in a dance class doing all kinds of things to try to help this girl out. And but we had patients that went and found this family and then basically told them about us to get her checked out. And they said, hey, thank you, but we've already tried chiropractic. It didn't seem to make much of a change. So one thing, this family knew that we do things differently from most. They dragged this family in, and they, thank goodness, because when she started, you can see that she had a tremendous amount of interference. On the scan, we don't want to see color. Those are the areas of interference, like the Wi-Fi, like a cell phone not functioning very well, the more color that's in here, right? If you look from a postural element, her body was shifted and twisted in there. Her spine and her pelvis dropped. So we started working on her. We know that she has neurological damage. We don't know to what capacity or level. We just know that the body's designed to heal itself. We found subluxations. We're going to adjust to restore get the spine and the nervous system to communicate, send and receive messages as optimal as we can, and let it go from there. And after 5 months of care, nervous system doing tremendously better through here. Her spine improving, went from a 4.8 degree drop to a 2 degree drop. But one of the coolest things is not only her, her strength improving, balance improving, on all that, but she was able to write on her own little success story that the chiropractors helped me focus better, to help me get 100%, 104% on my spelling test. You can imagine how just excited she was to share that, and what some of the teachers and the occupational therapists are like, what are you doing? There's a major shift. Well, we got to have the power, right? The intelligence, the communication from the brain to those different parts of the body. They were doing a lot of really good, cool things, but on a signal strength that's not working very well, right? You start maximizing the signal strength, the communication from the brain to the body, and then it's amazing how well the physical therapy and everything else with that is doing, right? And the reason I share that is there's so many families and kids in this community. We are on a mission, and like even with the things you'll see throughout the office and all that, because we are literally trying to make a major ripple effect in the community. We want to see lives be transformed. We know that the number one thing is people, the unawareness. How many people that are like out at night, every night, trying to pray and for an answered prayer or whatever's going on, that they're literally not finding an answer, right? And so we just think about reaching people, the unknown of that. So here we are to the very last here. If Amanda, if you could grab the sheets, you're all gonna get one of these sheets, and it's gonna help show you highlighted what you need to be working on. And you'll notice, like for example, there's you don't do everything on the sheet. The main specific things on there is where we want you to start. For example, if wobble disc is checked and highlighted there, then what you'll do is you'll scan that QR code that's going to get on your sheet, scroll down to that, and then the wobble disc is what you're wanting to do. There's a video. We found that we were showing every patient how to do everything, and then we'd show them again and again and again. And man, it'd be great to have a video so they can watch it over and over and over. And then the biggest benefit is after you go through this and you're working through it yourself, part of the program you're going to be able to schedule. As soon as you get done here, you're going to be able to schedule with Blake and be able to do that personal training and schedule that part of your program, a one-time personal training session at no cost to be able to review all those therapies and things that you need help with. But here's the thing is you must try it out first, so that way you'll know what the questions are. It's a waste of that training if you haven't tried to incorporate the things we have on your list first. Some of you guys are going to have more than others depending on what your situation is. And some of you guys, we have to hold off and wait. But just scan that QR code, work through those sections. And that's kind of like the next first step. I would recommend tonight before you go to bed to bust it out, try it, so that way it'll start becoming a regular thing for you. And then just let us know what questions you have. Like I said, as soon as you leave here in a second, you'll be able to schedule your appointment with Blake to get that locked in. And then you'll have a chance to go over everything before then. But otherwise, thank you guys so much. I went a little bit, some side tangents today, and I made it a little longer. I apologize. But I so much really appreciate you guys, and hopefully you learned a couple things that are going to help you shift the direction of your health, your life. But otherwise, give yourself a round of applause. Thank you so much. Good job, all of you.